This episode of Resilience and Relationships is sponsored by the Set Me Free Project.
Welcome back to Resilience and Relationships. I'm Dylan Yeomans. On today's show, we have a special guest, but we're going to get to that in just a moment. I'm joined by
Rebecca Saunders.
And our special guest,
Mollie Champion.
Absolutely. So, Mollie, before we dive into any of our topics here today, I'd love for you to kind of give us a little insight to who you are and why you might be on the show today.
Thank you, Dylan. Well, my name is Mollie Champion. I am a certified anti-money laundering specialist, and I have worked now over a decade in the field of anti-financial crime. I think a lot of people might not realize, but every financial industry, bank, credit union, your credit card issuers are required to have individuals like myself that are looking out for financial crime. And that's all manner of financial crime. It could be fraud, cyber scams, money laundering, terrorist financing, and yes, human trafficking.
Okay, I love it. So, Rebecca, I think you should kick us off and why, with our topic today of kind of why we've brought Mollie in.
So Mollie volunteers with us, and as part of her volunteering, she went through our human trafficking for the financial industry curriculum, and she presented it back to us. And I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm learning so much from just what you've added in. Like, oh my goodness. So I thought it'd be great to have her on to share. She just has this wealth of knowledge about that financial piece specifically.
I love it.
What we know is that people in Mollie's position can actually find red flags for human trafficking through transactions and behavior around that. So could you tell us a little bit more about what some things are that would stick out as something you need to pay attention for?
So if you don't mind, I'm going to go even further back into, I think for me, what has really helped with my profession and especially understanding how it relates to human trafficking is realizing, I mean, when we talk about financial crime, we're kind of talking about every crime. Most crimes, in fact, are motivated by money. That's the be all end all, right? And some crimes are literally just about laundering money. So just the movement of money because it's illicit gains. And I think then you get philosophical, or at least I do, because I like to go off on that tip. Like, what is money?
Why it started as salt.
Huh?
It started as salt. That was our base currency. That was the start of currency, was trading for salt.
Yeah. Very true, because it had value. But I mean, paper itself, though, like our currency right now, doesn't, it's just a piece of paper. We've attributed value to it. And really, that's through trust.
Isn't our money technically promissory notes?
It is. Yep. That's exactly what it says. So it's trust. The whole thing is based on trust. And it's interesting to me to think, honestly, you know, when we think about human trafficking, it's built on relationships and trust. So there's a lot, right? We have the opportunity anyway to try to pick up on clues in financial transactions. I think one thing that we try to train people to do is not just look at the transactions, but also we do have the opportunity to have interactions with these human beings. Like, increasingly everything is going online. So some of that is going away. They can open accounts online. They can do nearly every part of their banking relationship online without setting foot into a branch. But in those instances where they do, one thing we do talk about is to think about potential red flags there. Like if there's someone, they bring in someone else and they're dominating that conversation, like they're opening the account for this person, but really they're not really letting that person speak. They're speaking for them. But again, how frequently is that going to happen? That's something where we had focused on that a lot earlier. And I think with help from like the Set Me Free Project and people who really are knowledgeable about human trafficking much more than people in my profession, we have started thinking more about the accounts themselves and transactions, but still relationships, because everything about human trafficking really is relationships. So biggest red flags to us would be we see the same person on multiple accounts without there being a clear relationship or a clear tie between those people. Or maybe we don't see that same person, but we see the same phone number or email address on several accounts. That could be a huge red flag. Again, what's the tie between those people? We look for unexplained sources of income. That's kind of huge in everything that I do, especially when we think about money laundering, because money laundering is literally you're getting the proceeds of illicit activity, whatever that might be. And that is an unexplained source of wealth. Somebody who's taken out a lot of cash or maybe doing a lot of ATM withdrawals or P2P, which is what we call person to person or peer to peer, those like Venmo and Cash App, those transactions without a clear source of funds can be a big red flag for us, especially then if we look and see what is really coming in. Is it also those peer to peer transactions? Is it a lot of cash that's coming in? Is it, especially ATM deposits, maybe after hours? So those are some things that we key in on.
That's really interesting because I'm sure there's also like the really weirdly fine line of like they're a married couple and so finances kind of get randomly deposited in here and out. Whereas, trafficking side, it may look semi-similar, but obviously there's a bigger picture in that.
Potentially. And we're getting better. It's difficult though, because the other fine line for us to walk is obviously we are concerned about finding that illicit activity, but do our employers that we might have super want us to go onto websites where things are advertised? Not necessarily. It's not something that's usually available to us, but that's getting better. So again, people like me, unlike pretty much anyone else in a company like that, might have access to sites that you certainly wouldn't want your employees on, because that would look like an immediately fireable offense. But we really need the access just to be able to say it's not just a gut feeling. We can trace this to something that's really wrong that we need to report.
I find this so interesting, and I'm so thankful that we have people that do this, that really work to make sure that things are above board. How cool that you're there kind of watching out.
Yeah, we're trying.
I feel like this is like the unsung hero role because this is like the full intention of what Big Brother should have been. That whole like theory of Big Brother out there. It's like, well, this is what it should have been. Like you're looking out for the problems that affect all. Yeah, it's not just we're just watching people watch people. It's you're watching a unique set of situations happen. And like you said, there's so many specific things you have to watch for. You have to basically file and document. Something points to you need to step in and intervene, or a probable explanation somewhere, which is such a very like investigative role. It's wild to me that like this is not a tangent of like police force and like FBI and like things like that. It's very odd.
It's not a tangent necessarily, but do we work closely with those? Yeah, we do. Some people in my profession also have come from law enforcement. I have switched to being like from a sworn officer or an agent to taking on these financial crimes because they work so closely with us. I will say though, quick shout out for Omaha, Nebraska. We are exceptional in many ways. One would be we are very fortunate, and there's a lot of hardworking people like myself who have over years now really gathered every month. The financial institutions in the area meet with state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies. And we have that information sharing piece because this isn't where we're competing with each other. This is where we literally take on the role of trying to protect financial system of the United States that all of us use and that all of us rely on. We have been so efficient, I suppose, at that now a lot of other people in the country are looking to us as an example of what they need to build for themselves in their areas, how they can have that thread and common meetup between those law enforcement agencies and the financial institutions. Because again, most crime is money. The people who are looking for the crime should be talking to the people who can see where the money is going.
I love to hear that collaboration because, we've seen this in the human trafficking world too. We are stronger when we come together to fight these evils. And I just love that that's happening in Omaha. I hope that catches on nationwide.
Yes, we're tasked with doing so much in my role and similar roles that, like you said, obviously, human trafficking is one thing we're looking for, but it's a lot more than that. And we really are trying to make that the financial economy that we rely on fair as possible for everyone to have a fair shot.
It's also kind of nice to hear that, hey, in that Nebraska state, the one that's full of corn, the one that people fly over all the time. Well, hey, by the way, they're also known for other than sports. They're now a financial pioneer here, which is
Yeah.
awesome to kind of hear. And usually I feel like Nebraska is the echo chamber in from the coasts. And this time it's the
Mhm.
inverse, which hopefully it
Yes.
spreads faster.
Hope so. I mean, I know that we've had, I think, Boston reach out. And so, yeah, the financial institutions haven't been quite as involved, maybe, as the law enforcement agencies on that. We do hear and they share. It's nice, too, because from our end, I'm not a law enforcement agent. What I'm doing and the work that I'm doing is important, but I'm usually just kind of lofting things up to law enforcement. And we often don't really necessarily get to hear how that story ends. It's nice that when we actually can hear maybe how that story ends, not that I can always share that, of course. I can't talk about that, but at least we can know for ourselves that our work is appreciated and that it does go somewhere, and that sometimes there really is. The story is wrapped up how it should be, that
Right.
the person, the criminal who's at fault, is held to account.
I'm a little curious too, since you kind of brought up a really interesting point about how closely the financial divisions and law enforcement seem to just constantly work together. Are there any, like, I don't want to call them conventions, but are there any like expos or things that happen yearly that are just a get together for both sides to kind of just have panels or hash it out of like, hey, this is what we're trending in this department. What are you seeing in yours?
There are more and more. The biggest players in the game, I would say, is there are some nonprofit associations that are in this realm. A lot of people in financial industries and in law enforcement have gotten these certifications. There's the Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists, and there's also the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So those are two big. ACFE, I'm not sure if it's international. It's national for sure. ACAMS, the money laundering specialist, that's an international organization. They both have conferences every year, at least once a year, if not a couple times a year, if not several throughout the globe.
Quarterly.
Yeah, for those industry professionals and law enforcement agencies to meet and discuss.
That's
Well, that's
wonderful.
awesome. Now, Molly, you can't really give details, but has there been anything or like firsthand experience of, thwarted some things in my day, even in the human trafficking aspect or otherwise?
Like things that ended up me being quite sure that it was something. Yes, yes. Cannot give details,
Like,
but
yeah, you can't really give details, but I'm kind of curious more so like in your experience, is it semi-frequent that this has happened? Is it kind of like, oh yeah, about every 2 years this seems to happen? Or is it more you just got an eye and you just keep catching it along?
yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the kind of financial crime you're referring to. If it's fraud, every day,
Wow.
without fail. Multiple. That would be, I think, any financial institution you're talking to. Absolutely. It's rampant. It's
And people,
job security, but it's sad.
Right.
that's what I'm just sitting there. I'm like, people think they're gonna get away with it.
Well, I mean, it's not always necessarily that they think they're going to get away with it so much as, what we see a lot more of is people who have been targeted in
Oh,
scams more than we see those who are knowingly complicit actors in the situation. We see that as well, however. And I mean, one thing to keep in mind would be we still treat what we call white collar crime, so your financial crimes, a lot less severely than we treat violent crimes. There's plenty of good argument to be had there, and I like to debate. So that's, if we had more time, I would love to. But I think we could have some serious improvements in that area, especially when I think it's too easy to disregard the domino effect that financial crime has. And that's something that really puts a fire in my stomach and gets me to get up every morning and keep doing it, as I know how devastating it is. When it's easy to say, maybe from a prosecuting standpoint, well, all they stole is money. Well, and right now, and how our economy works, money is your ability to live. It's your ability to have a place to stay, to have food to eat, to get medication that you might need, or health care that you might need. It really affects everything. And it is devastating to your mental well being to be taken advantage of. That also has detrimental and long lasting consequences that also affect, those that are close to you, your loved ones, your family, your friends. So I think we could do better in realizing that, yes, it is just money, maybe. It wasn't violent. However, the effects of what they're doing are devastating nonetheless.
Yeah, I think that's something that if I could, maybe I should pose this to you, because if I could wave the magic wand here, there'd probably be a
Mm.
bit more accountability for those who just can pull all the money and sit there and hold it, because that just strangleholds wherever they're doing that too. On the flip
Yes.
side of that, if you could wave your magic wand and you could do something about this, what would be one of the things you'd want to implement or see happen in that regard? Maybe it's a step towards change. Maybe it's more accountability on a certain aspect. How would that look from your perspective if you could change something?
This episode of Resilience in Relationships is sponsored by the Set Me Free Project. At the Set Me Free Project, we believe that prevention is powerful. And through our Ready to Stand curriculum, we equip youth, parents, educators, and industry professionals of all kinds with the tools to recognize human trafficking, navigate digital spaces safely, and build healthy relationships before exploitation can occur. Our mission at the Set Me Free Project is to stop human trafficking before it starts by providing prevention education to all ages.
What a good question. And I can only change one thing.
Yeah, let's just say it only works once. You got the one wish. Gotta make it a
That
little tough.
is, yeah, that's rough. Honestly, I'm like, well, I'm also trying to bring it back to, grounded and stay on the top of that. Thinking about, 'cause I'm like, well, I really could get into, well, there's an awful lot of extraction in the economy, and there's a lot of favoring capital gains over income of people who work for a living. It's a whole different conversation.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, which is still worth having, but this probably isn't the place to have it. I think if I could change one thing, it would be for lawmakers to really start focusing in on, look, the law is always going to move slower than technology. That's just a fact. And in many ways, that's good because we don't want to rush to get things out and fumble it. We want time to do it right. However, in the United States, we are well behind, like Great Britain and the UK, on things like privacy and really making stronger laws that require companies to better protect people's privacy. And I mean, not just their privacy, their data. That really is your privacy. That to me would be, I guess, the one thing I would change, honestly. We need laws on that respect. And that might seem like I'm not tying it back to what we're talking about, but really, I was gonna say, I'm like, you guys maybe would know more immediately. There is a huge tie between those two things. Where anymore, again, we are online. A lot of our information is online. A lot of it is not difficult to get a hold of. And a lot of people don't realize that there are people out there who make a lot of money just selling your information from people who want it. And that can, of course, be companies who are trying to sell you something, which might seem kind of innocuous, but it can also be someone who's trying to find where you are, someone who's trying to stalk you, someone who wants to exert control over you. Increasingly, the way they might do that would be online and through your information. And having that information can be sort of detrimental or be the keys to your freedom to move about your life as you wish, like especially with your money. If they're able to get hold of your online banking and control your accounts, I mean, that is going to really restrict your ability to move through the world and again, access the things that you need because money is the way that you access your needs in our country. So I think that would be something I would really like there to be a bigger focus on because it would also make it that much harder on down the line for scammers to get that information and exploit it. And for, again, companies to be held to account that if you're going to make a profit off of it, why is it that we only see the detrimental effects? None of
How
that
come
is
we
coming
don't
back
see
to
the
the people.
profit?
Yeah. Who you're,
My info. Why
Yeah.
don't I get a little residual income here?
exactly. Yeah.
Man, could
And
you
I think,
imagine if they actually did someday pass something like that? If there was like a big lawsuit back pay kind of thing, the
we
amount
need it.
of money would we just like instantly go into collapse as a
No.
financial economy? Could we just collapse at that point?
No. I think honestly, we're on the verge of there's going to be lawmakers, and there are lawmakers already who are talking about that there need to be dividends paid to the American populace for things like AI. If you're going to replace my job, then you better
Yeah.
be, giving that back
That's
to
a
the
huge
people
one right
who's.
now too, like especially using like voice actors. They're
Mhm.
not allowed to use their voice, but they're just doing it anyway. And
Right.
because this company's like, "Oh, you signed a contract to use your voice." It's like, "Well, yeah, my voice, not the
Yeah,
computer replicating my voice." So
exactly.
there's a whole nother conversation there about what it's doing to just industries. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yep.
Rebecca, I've hogged all of the questions today.
You're asking
What would
a
you
lot.
like to ask our guest?
I think the one big question I have left that I think would help everyone listening is like, we've talked about some of these risks. We've talked about, there really are dangers out there with our information being so public. What are your recommendations for just like an average everyday person? How can we help protect ourselves?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think let me give you some basics because I do speak a lot and I like to volunteer my time, obviously, at the Set Me Free Project, but other places as well. I'm passionate about financial literacy, and that would be, honestly, just understanding how our financial system works. But to me, a big cornerstone of that is education on fraud and identity theft and how to protect yourself. So, personally, I think things that you can do is be cognizant of what information you're giving out and how frequently you're giving that out. I would start being a little bit more reticent to willingly divulge that information. Things like, even your email address. Now, it's going to be really easy for someone to find that, but you need to guard your email address above everything else. And that's even speaking from someone who's a financial professional. Please guard your online banking information and never share that with anyone. No one should ask you for that, and that's for you and you alone. But your email account is the key to your kingdom. You must guard your password to your email. If someone can get into that, then they can see everywhere you have an account, friends and family that are messaging you. And if you have accounts other places and you forget that password, where does that password reset go when you hit forgot password? To your email account. So make sure you're guarding that. And it's important not to reuse passwords. Maybe people are sick of hearing that, but it's so important because if somebody does get, a username and password, they've bought it off the dark web because some website that you used 3 years ago to buy a pair of shoes and you forgot it existed got hacked, and all of that's for sale on the dark web. Happens every day. If they have, though, how often is the username your email address? 50% of the time or more, probably. If they have that combination of username and password, they can run a bot to go try that same combination, username and password, on about every site they can think of to see if it will open up another door. So that's why it's so important not to reuse your passwords because you can't stop them from hacking sites. There's nothing you or I can do about that. But you can make yourself a less desirable target because you know what? If it doesn't work somewhere else, they're just going to skip you and move on. So guard yourself in that way. And then again, just be wary of who you trust. I don't want people to be scared to trust. Kind of the beautiful part of life. We all have to just be cognizant or really think about who it is that you're trusting and what information they're asking you for. I think something that has really exploded, and we've seen so much more of it, and it's really scary and it ties directly into human trafficking, is the polite way to talk about it would be cryptocurrency investment scams. And the really graphic term for it, but it's graphic in that it paints a very vivid picture, is pig butchering is what it's called. The FBI has great articles on this, but it is detrimental in that it's a scam, but it's also detrimental in that the people who are perpetrating it are often victims of human trafficking. They have been trafficked themselves. And this is very common in Southeast Asia, where they responded maybe to like a job ad thinking that there was a job for them. And once they get there, their passport and their documentation is taken from them, and they are put to work running these scams. And you you yourself might have gotten a text message or a message through social media that was someone who is part of this, because it usually starts very random right? It'll be like a message out of nowhere that's like, hey, hello, hi, friend. And you might say, I don't know this number. Who are you? And they're like, oh, this is Matilda or whoever. Don't you know me? And if you say no and you keep responding, they're going to say, oh, well, sorry, I was trying to message my friend, but hey, you seem nice. Let's have a conversation. And if you do, right, that's how they're building that relationship and that trust. And they might take several months to do this, but there's a playbook. And eventually they're going to start telling you about this great investment, it's cryptocurrency, and directing people to usually spend their own money and place it into wallets that they do not control, that instead the scammers control. And unfortunately, how it works is, again, they're building that relationship and they're taking the time to really earn that person's trust. And once they have that, then they get them convinced that it is such a good deal. They'll even have fake websites, fake apps, and they'll show them that they're making these huge returns on their investment when really it's just smoke and mirrors. They've just made it up. And the second they try to withdraw anything, it's, well, you have to pay some huge fine or fee or tax or customs to get that money. And if you, again, usually then it's the sunk cost fallacy of, I've already spent this much, I'm too far in, I'm too invested. So they send that to get it out. And of course, then it's always, there's something else. You didn't pay enough. And it's truly devastating to know too. And I only knew this because of our working with like the feds, especially the FBI, that the people who are perpetrating it, the people on the other end, are usually people who themselves are being victimized. And that's really unfortunate too, because I think in my line, there's been plenty of people who say, I'll mess with scammers because at least if they're talking to me, they can't scam somebody else. Well, if you've not heard it anywhere else, hear it here first. I wouldn't do that anymore because you don't know that person is willing and complicit in this crime. They could be forced to do this against their will, and there could be repercussions for them, for people who are wasting their time. So I
I
would
think it's
say
so
just don't
interesting
respond.
because like back in the day it was properties, right? So
Yeah.
they would bite you in on a property.
Mhm.
Well, I can't really show it to you. It's in Havana.
Yeah.
So it's
Right,
got to be in
right.
cash, customs and all that. We got to bribe people. And so they would play it off like, well, we're going to get to it. We're just we're washing the money kind of thing through buying this nightclub up, and then we're going to get the investment back.
Yeah.
It's just so weird how it's
Still around
evolved.
too.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's still totally around, but it's just weird
Yep.
how it's kind of evolved. Because I still think a little bit old school minded of like, oh yeah, it used to be bags, like duffel bags of cash that you would fake, and like there wouldn't be all cash in there. It would be minor of some degree, whether that was soup can lids or whatever, like to stack it up to make it look like it was a huge amount of money that these guys were worth.
Yeah.
But where you're saying it's like, well, now they have a website that they can just say, well, there's $3 million in this bank account. Prove it. So it's almost made it so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to say that people don't still use cash because, again, cash can be hard to trace. That's why criminals like it. But there are plenty of other things that are difficult to trace. Crypto would be one.
Yeah.
Again, there can be some misunderstanding there. It's pseudo-anonymous. It's not anonymous. It's very easy actually to track transactions because it's a public ledger. That's what the blockchain is. But it can be very difficult to figure out who owns those lines of code on that blockchain to associate an actual person to that.
Absolutely. I think we're probably going to have you on for a part 2
Yes.
episode or something because there's just not enough time today to
Thanks
get
so
through everything that we had lined up. Because I think, especially
Yeah.
in part 2, if we can make it happen, I'd love to ask you a couple of tips that you could give people to pay attention to, maybe if they find themselves in situations of, hey, well, my brand new boyfriend is wanting me to open up a joint account week 3 of dating him. So
Yeah. Can
maybe
I touch
things
on
like
that
that.
really fast?
Rebecca, do we have time?
Yeah, we have probably another minute.
Okay. I would say if you're in that and you're like, ooh, my new boyfriend or whatever is asking me for money, what I would say is a lot what the Set Me Free Project would say is think about what a trusted person would ask you to do, right? A trusted person is not going to ask you to go against your moral code. They're not going to ask you to do something that's against your own best interest. They're not going to ask you to do anything that's illegal. Right? So think about that. Because if you resist, usually that person's going to start saying, like, well, you can't tell your family or your friends, you can't tell the bank. Would a trusted person say those things to you? No.
That's very true.
Beautiful.
Yep.
I definitely agree with everything you just said. Yes.
Yep. So very similar. Think about who you're putting your trust in. That person's asking you to do something that doesn't make you feel good. It's probably not the person to trust.
And you're saying that I should be wanting to be treated well?
Yes, because you have intrinsic value that cannot be
Exactly.
altered or changed or taken
That's
away.
exactly right. We all have
Yes.
intrinsic value. So I love that.
Yep.
Molly, again, I really want to thank you for taking time today for part 1 now of having you on the show. We're definitely going to have to get you back on the show, especially with Stephanie involved, because I can only imagine some of the questions she's going to come up with. So
We'll have
I'm
to.
excited for part 2 here.
Pleasure.
So-
Rebecca, anything else before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Just thank you so much. This was really good.
Absolutely. So thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget, you can check out Stephanie's new book from the Set Me Free Project down below in the comments. Click that link. You can go and buy yours either digitally or get a signed physical copy even. So there's a couple options for you. But thank you for tuning into Resilience in Relationships on today's episode.
Get some R&R.